Welcome to serviced accommodation fire safety, something that should be at the forefront of your portfolio and your setup of any property, whether it's in a high rise or in a house, so to speak. There's different guidelines, but we're going to cover all that today. So any questions, just ping them in, please. If you're watching this afterwards, just ping me an email. That'll be great. Okay, let's just... Hi, Isabel. You made it. Morning, Emily. Morning everyone. Good. So this, as I said, this is all about fire safety for service accommodation. Now it will cover C3, as in renting your property out in its entirety, and it will also include a lot more complexity with C1. When I talk about complexity, it's fairly straightforward, because if you're doing C1, you would basically get you would need professionals to do that as part of the whole setup. Good. I'm going to share my screen. So let's do that now. Make sure we've got that. Yeah, that's all in hand. Good. Let's go with that. Okay, for some reason, the silly screen is not sharing again. Just let me check something here, and we'll sort this out. So if you have anything before then, just let me know. Fire safety, as I said, should be at the top of your list when setting up. It's not just the building fire safety, it's the entire setup. So it could be your furniture, and your furniture can include your soft furnishings and that type of thing. All right. Most people, when they start out, and I was kind of a bit like this, you don't sort of look at fire safety as the number one thing. However, we do now, and it's extremely important. And the key is, you look at some of the history of fires in and around London in the past sort of 3 or 4 years, where there's been, Grenfell for a start, a lot of people suffered. They've just come out and said it's because that they didn't do the stay put. Well, they did stay put. They were told to stay put, and that's part of a strategy that the fire brigade used. And obviously, in that case, it didn't work because the wrong materials were being used, or whatever it might be. So yeah, and that's just all come out, obviously. So we want to make sure, and it's not first and foremost the building security and our business. That's not how you think in this case. This is people's lives that we're looking at. All right. So we need to make sure that we are up to date with all of our fire safety. Good. Right. If you can hear music in the background, we have builders in as well. So excuse me for that. Don't know what they're playing, so okay, here we go. So many of us have apartments, right? And with apartments, it's not, your fire safety is going to be much easier, simply because if they are purpose built, and the key is if they are purpose built, because if something is purpose built, it's already going to have a lot of fire safety in place, such as the exit signs, the smoke detectors, fire detectors, fire alarm systems. It's going to have fire doors, or the strips around the fire doors. It's going to have escape routes, you name it. It's going to have everything in place. However, if it's something that's not purpose built, now this can be, let's say, I don't know, a double frontage Victorian home that's been converted into 4 flats, and they put a loft on top and have turned it into 5 flats. That is not what we call purpose built. That's a conversion. And it goes along the lines of HMO licensing as well. So with HMO licensing, they're quite strict with something that's not purpose built. They're strict in any way, in any case. However, it's much easier to get an HMO license, or in some cases you don't need a license in something that's purpose built, depending on the amount of people you're putting in there. But we're not talking about HMOs today. We're talking about service accommodation. So the key with the basic fire safety, if you like, if there's such a thing, I guess there is. So basic fire safety begins with C3. So C3 and C1, you should know the difference by now, but if you don't, C3 is a planning class for residential homes. C4 is another one, HMOs. C, your hotels, your B&Bs, and your service accommodation comes into that too. If you're renting by the room. So C1 if you're renting by the room, C3 if you're renting the entire property, much like a buy-to-let. So strictly speaking, if you like, we only have to do the basic fire safety for C3, which is, smoke detectors. There's not a lot more that you have to put in place, really. I mean, I've just finished my rental property, one of the refurbs, and I took the gas cooker out and I put in electric, simply because we did a walk around fire assessment of what we think should be in place and shouldn't be in place, and it's called a self-assessment, and we'll go through that. So I also looked at the smoke detectors, and I thought, okay, so we've got one in the hallway upstairs, and we've got one in the kitchen, and that was pretty much it, and one in the hallway downstairs, so there's 3. However, if one in the kitchen goes off, let's say, for instance, somebody goes to bed and they leave something cooking, leave the oven on, and it might have something in there that's not flammable to 200 degrees Celsius, but above that it starts to become flammable and it'll go up. Hopefully it's contained within the oven, but in some cases it may not. Or washing machines and dryers that are left on at night, and dishwashers, are the most common causes of fire in any house. And you have to bear in mind that we are providing accommodation in a house in many cases, or an apartment, or it could be a non-purpose built property. So we are, we're responsible for that. And the worst case scenario that you can come up to, you can be up on a manslaughter charge. I don't want to scare you, but that's the case. And then living with the rest of your life, that somebody's lost their life. It could be a whole family you've got in there. It could be 4 or 5 people with young kids, and their life is over, and it's thanks to you being, slack or lazy, shall we say, or non-compliant. So for me, the minimum things that I would put in a house, and this is what I put in my rental properties as well. Now, you want to have a smoke and carbon monoxide alarm. Now, you don't need a carbon monoxide alarm, technically, unless you've got open fossil fuels burning. However, always have one, because, again, read the news, and a lot of this has happened over on the continent, is that if you've got a gas boiler and you don't know the history of that gas boiler, if you're taking on a property, and it could be leaking gas and you can't smell it, or whatever it is, and carbon monoxide, and people go to sleep, they don't wake up again. So you want to have a carbon monoxide alarm sort of right next to that, if you like. So if that starts to go off, people can get out, and then you can obviously have it looked at by the landlord if you're doing rent to rent, or your own service people. Now, with the smoke alarms, what I would do is I would use a Wi-Fi interlinked, and I'll give you some details on that next. But it's a Wi-Fi interlinked. Now, it's called, the ones that I use is Wi-Fi 2 numerical, Thermo P Tech smoke alarm, and it's by Fire Angel. If you go to fireangel.co.uk and go to their product section, look up WST, it's what is that, Whiskey Sierra Tango hyphen dash 630. They are the best ones about at the moment. They're about £39 each. Now, if you've got a 2-bed property, I would have one in each bedroom. I would have one in the kitchen, and I would get an additional smoke combination smoke and heat detector. They cost a bit more, but you can interlink all the others. So wherever they're cooking, they have heat. Somebody might get up at, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning, decide they're going to cook something, and they nod off. And if they nod off, and look, we don't allow smoking in our properties, but somebody might have a sneaky cigarette, whatever they're doing, they sneak up, they have it out the window, and they might, I don't know, fall asleep or whatever, especially if they've had a couple of drinks, bang. And smouldering cigarettes and that type of thing, again, big causes of fire, and the whole family or whoever, the whole house, or even the whole block is up in flames. So you want to make sure you've got heat, and I would have it in each bedroom. If you've got 3, get 3 bedrooms, 1 in each, 1 in the kitchen, and then 1 in the hallway, the main hallway, because that will detect, and you want it sort of near the front door, if you like. So if you're in an apartment block, it will detect, smoke coming in from there. You'll get smoke from the kitchen and the other open plan area, if it's an open plan area. And then if you've got a separate lounge that's can be closed off, I would have another one in there too. And then I would have one in the, so you could have 3, 4, 5. You might say, oh, that's £40 each. They last about 3 years. So you've only got to do it once if you have a property for 3 years. And you should be checking them as well, just to make sure that they're not faulty. Get the cleaners to check them whenever they're in. If they're too short, just get, it's got a big symbol on it, just get them to get their mop or the broom handle, lightly touch it, beep, 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 and away you go. You also need to have, now it's a bit of a bone of contention here, because the fire brigade will say, no, we don't want you fighting fires. We're the fire brigade. We want you running out. However, we provide them anyway, because it could be something small that happens that, they might have cooked something, and we don't allow chip fires or anything like that in our properties. And, something catches fire, they can quickly douse it out. Or worst that can happen, if they've got a sleeve or something, I don't know, and it's winter and it catches and it starts to smolder or whatever, or catch fire, then they can quickly douse that out, or reach for the tap or whatever. But, whatever happens in the case of fire happens. We don't know. The fire extinguisher should be all-purpose, non-powder. The rules changed about 1.5 years ago that they don't want powder. For whatever reason, they thought that, different sort of cases that you can inhale a powder, it will blind you or whatever. What would you prefer, burn to death or get powder in your face? I don't know. So all-purpose, non-powder are the ones you want. And you want a decent sized one, but not the massive one. You should have a nice sign that says where it is, and right next to that, you should have a fire blanket. The fire blanket is not to put out fires. The fire blanket is to put over people, or you can chuckle over something like on the stove or something like that. Now, bearing in mind, if it's going to be put on top of people, then you need to make sure it is a large fire blanket. Too many people go to places like IKEA and buy a fire blanket for £5 or £7, but then realize it's only a small one. And I'm talking, this big. You need one that's going to cover a person, pretty much. So again, I strongly advise all of these things are put in to any or all of your properties. You should also have an instruction notice on what to do in the event of fire in the property. Now, if it's a large property, as in like you're in a block of flats or something like that, there will be an evacuation plan that's normally in the reception, and it should be on all of the other fire doors as well, the exits, to show on each floor. So have a look at that, get a copy of that, and you can also put one of those in the room if they don't already have one in the flat. But in most cases, a lot of people take them down, they chuck them out, whatever it is. So just make sure they're on there for the escape route. And that should be how to escape the building. So you want to put it on the back of the exit door or something like that, because that's where they'll be going, right? I would also include something that we are now adopting is a separate email. Now, you should be sending the email like, say, hey, your stay is with us tomorrow, check-in. And the morning of their check-in, send them another email that's entitled or titled Fire Safety in our apartment, in our property, or whatever it is. And I would put on there, must read. So, and you can talk about, it's about their safety and that type of thing. And they'll be more than happy that you are being responsible, and you are a super responsible host for doing that. So I would add that in your channel manager, whichever one you're using, as a separate, and again, it's an automated email, and send that through. Okay. And just, let them know what you have in place of fire safety as well. The fire extinguisher, when it shouldn't be used, the fire blanket, when it shouldn't be used. In most cases, we just you out. That smoke detectors. So this might stop them from trying to have that sneaky little cigarette if they're having one in your property. And we can't control everything. We try and do our best. And it's kind of a win-win for us because, again, number one, it will deter them from smoking, and number two, the whole building's going to light up if they do have a smoke. You also need to complete your own fire risk assessment on every single property that you have. You need to check your alarms weekly, if not more, and you need to record that in a fire log. Now, you can have an online log that you do, say, yeah, fire tested. And if you're working remotely, just get your cleaners to send you a message through, and you should have them logged into your channel manager and just put on their fire test, done, completed, and, green light, if you like, that's still working. And the dates, if you like, they'll be on the Fire Angel when they expire as well. So that's quite good. But you just can't rely on technology to always be working. Every guest should be talked through the fire safety procedures on arrival or before arrival, which again, you can do via an email and must read. You could even put on there at the bottom, please reply stating that you have read and understood this. And again, it's another thing that you will have as a record on your channel manager that you can then either, automatically adjust and put into your fire log or whatever you might do. But at least you've got a record there that they've read it, you've sent it. So you've got your own fire log, if you like, or part of the fire log on your channel manager. So again, you're using your channel manager for an additional feature here. Good. So as I said, the ones that I like, and I put in all my rental properties now, is the Wi-Fi Safe 2. No, it's called W-I Safe, Y-Safe 2, numerical 2, Thermo P-Tech smoke alarm. All one word, the Thermo P-Tech. And they're about £39.99. They advise that you should have it in your bedrooms, living room, hallway, and on a landing if it's 2 stories, 2 levels. If it's a bungalow, obviously just in your main hallway. Good, makes sense? Okay, so let's move on. We'll get some questions at the end. Electronics, electrics, etc., and appliances. If there are any signs of worn cords, cables, whatever that might be frayed, cracked, especially some of you here have had your properties for 3-4 years now, right? If there's any sign of degradation whatsoever, replace them. Replace the entire appliance. Because if the cables are cracked, chances are the rest of the product's going to be a bit, it's going to be getting worn out. When you think about it at home, if you've got something that's frayed and knackered, you think, oh, I've got to replace that. Doesn't look safe. Well, guess what? There's a lot more people using these kettles, etc., or toasters. If you have a plug socket and you've got limited plug sockets, don't put a big bloody strip of, what do they call them? The extension leads where you're plugging, like 5, 6, 7 plugs into one thing. Yeah, you can get all the surge protectors and that type of thing, and all of this, but I'd highly recommend you don't do that. Again, the fire brigade recommend you don't do it. You want plugged straight in. Good. So basically, what we're saying there with extension cords is you don't want to. How do we say? You don't want to overload the circuit that it's on in that one particular plug, if you like. And we're all guilty of it, right? But when it comes to people staying in your property that are going to be asleep, you want the lowest risk of any cause of fire as possible. And part of this is part of your self-assessment. And I'll give you a link for your fire assessment and how you do that. Basically, 5-step process. And one thing again that the fire brigade recommend is you should never, ever, ever run any cords or anything like that. You get a mat and you sort of hide it under there and it'll be nice and hidden. No one will see it. I'll tape it to the floor. Don't do that. If you have that in your property, again, it's a trip hazard, but definitely a fire hazard. So don't do that. Evacuation plan, which should be part of the email, that fire email that you send, and it should also be on your door within your property. So it's an essential aspect of being prepared for fire safety, if you like. You have to create or have an escape plan. Now, if you're in a house of your own, one that you're renting, as in like an old refurb period style home, then you're going to have to, devise your own escape plan, like back door, front door. Back door, you don't want them going out there if there's a bloody courtyard, because the flames will basically, it will get to them, will be so hot it could affect them, and it could ignite their clothes or whatever. If I'm from here to where the camera is, and that's as big as a courtyard, you don't want to be doing an evacuation procedure out into the courtyard. Ideally, you want it to the front room. If there are windows upstairs, you could say, and they do recommend this from the first floor, that there are windows that could be open and escape plan to get out. Good. So when you're furnishing your property, you don't want furniture in front of those windows, because that, again, as part of your fire assessment, will be a risk, a high risk. Okay, so you need to identify all of the routes to exit your building, if you like. If there could be a side door, etc., etc. You know your own properties. Ideally, you want a minimum of 2 escape routes. So, and this is, we're talking houses, so it could be a side door, back door, and most houses, they do have a decent sized sort of back garden or some sort of back garden. If they don't, then you're going to need front room and maybe top floor where they can escape from. Good. Now, apart hotels and service apartments, we're talking here, they have a C1 classification. In other words, you can rent them by the room. There may be an 8 apartment block that you have where you're renting out, by the entire property, so it's still classified as C3. However, I would, as part of your due diligence, I would have a local fire safety risk assessment expert come around and assess it for you. In most cases, the people who've done these conversions, they will have put the minimum fire safety in and that type of thing anyway. But you just want to make sure and I would get an independent survey done. At our hotels and pubs, we've had that done, and they passed pretty much straight away because we put in exactly what they ask us to do. So hotels and service apartments, if you like, are classified as hotel accommodation, if you like, because you've got B&Bs as well, you've got guest houses. All of these fall under fall under C1. So you need to ensure that you reform to the regulations that the fire department or fire safety puts in place. This is C1. So in hotels, I mean, we've just done it for our hotel in Tottenham, and it's not as hard as you think. All right. So you should have it done by what they call a competent fire risk assessor, so somebody that's obviously qualified, and then they'll tick that off and give you recommendations of what you should be doing. Some of them will give you over-the-top recommendations, but you want to know the specifics and then work on the recommendations probably later. You want to know that it's cleared by regulations and that you're covered for fire safety. You should also, if you do a fire risk assessment today, you need to make sure that you do another one before this day, 2020. Ideally, you want to do them sort of every quarter, to be fair, because part of that will be checking all of the cables and that type of thing for your appliances. You should be checking that every quarter, and you should be putting these diary dates into your channel managers to create alerts for you and each property, because 25 properties, you need to make sure that you're using your systems and your software and your automation properly. In some cases, with service apartments and apart hotels where you're renting by the room and that type of thing, what they call a L2, Lima 2, numerical 2, fire alarm system should be present at all apart hotels and service apartment buildings. If they're C1, at least one detector. The heat detector for the kitchen should be linked to the building fire alarm panel. And again, this is getting technical, and I don't want to get too technical. Employ your own fire risk assessment person, and they will tell you what you need and what you don't need, based again on your planning classification, how many people will be in that building at any one time, and are they related, etc., on the same booking. If you've got staff in there, make sure that all the staff are aware of any fire procedures and any evacuation procedures as well. A fire detection system, or electronic one if you like, removes that human element to raise the alarm, because some humans will like to save everyone in the building. Other humans will be the ones who get out straight away and they're like, just look after number one. So if one of those people is like, I need to get out, I look after number one, how are they going to raise the alarm to the rest of the building? So it takes away that human element, if you like. So there is the stay put strategy that I talked about. Again, you'll need someone to come in and assess whether that is something that you can put into place. And they will write up the whole fire procedure for you, an evacuation plan, if you're doing C1. Okay. And you need a qualified risk assessor to look at that. And I would get them to write up the whole entire thing. Again, same as C3, provide your guests and customers with all the fire information. You need to have the fire notices in every single apartment. And if you're doing it by the room, in every single room. Again, the same as the fire plan and that type of thing, the evacuation procedure. Now, there was a fire some time ago, a few years back, where some people lost their lives, and all of these procedures were in place. Every single thing was in place. And there was a hotel. Now, what happened is somebody, in their wisdom, and they thought they were being cute, decided to get a disposable barbecue, and they were going to go out into the balcony and have their own little summer barbecue. And they had two of these, they're like A4 size paper, I guess. This sort of size, what they are, disposable barbecues. And they had two. They had them cranked up. And they'd had a few drinks, apparently. There was evidence of that, because there's bottles of booze, empty booze everywhere after the fire. And it turned out the cause of fire was these two disposable barbecues out on the balcony. And you say to yourself, well, how the hell does that cause a fire? The balconies were wooden. And up it went, the whole entire building. Actually, I think it was the first 6 floors of the building. And so, yeah, not good. So again, if there are, all of that should be on your notices that, no disposable barbecues, no smoking, no naked flames, definitely no candles. And please do not bring your own candles. Even if you think it's going to be safe, just have a sneaky little candle in the bath, having a little bit of a smolder yourself in the hot water. You do not allow this, and that should all be on your notifications. Do not provide candles or put candles in your properties. The best ones are the ones that you can just turn on. You're going to have to replace the batteries. They don't last long, but if you want to, put the ones that are battery operated. They've got a little flame flicker. Again, I would just simply not provide them. And again, in your fire safety email that you sent out, that should be in there. Good. If there are fire doors in the property, make sure they're kept in good condition, not damaged, not, they haven't been leant on, they don't close properly and that type of thing. All of your exits, so we talk about minimalistic sort of furniture as being part of the trend. I would keep that as part of, your setup, is you don't want clutter and stuff everywhere, don't want and cute little toys, or some people do this, most don't, but some do. So if it's one of you, don't do that. The fire alarm system should be checked regularly as well. Have regular fire alarm checks. Emergency lighting should all be checked, and all of that is part of it too. Your emergency lighting, so when everything goes down, you've got the backup lighting with the exit signs that gets you out. Good. And there's loads of other things for that. So if you're doing C1, again, I would make sure that you just get simply get a qualified risk assessor. Furniture. Your furniture would include things like, your cushions, scatter blankets, seat pads, all of these sort of things. Pillows, not pillowcases, but pillows. So all of these things should be included. So do the regulations apply to you? Yes, if you're providing self-catering accommodation that contains upholstered furniture. So, and everyone's going to be containing upholstered furniture, right? It's the stuff with comfort. To provide self-catering accommodation, the legislation does apply to you. So what furniture is affected? So domestic furniture, which we're going to be using anyway, it includes any children's furniture. Now that could be a travel cot or a cot that you provide. So we don't provide the mattress. We don't provide that. We allow them to bring the mattress, but not the actual bed itself. Again, it's just making sure that they comply with everything. And domestic furniture, beds and divans. So the bed, mattress, and then the divan underneath. Their bases, headboards, etc., mattresses of any size, doesn't matter. Whether it's single, double, king, super king. Sofa beds, any futons, etc., and any other convertible type of beds. Scatter cushions, pillows, furniture in caravans if you're doing caravans. There is a requirement for what we call crib 5 furniture. CRIB, as in my crib. Crib 5 furniture. Now, it's the minimum for like hotels, because I think we're a medium to high risk and it's only put at that because people sleep in our property. You got crib 7, but crib 7 is like mental health institutions or prisons and that type of thing, where the risk is regarded as extreme, if you like. So we're kind of in the middle. So what type of organizations or buildings, if you like, or institutions have to have crib 5? Hotels, bed and breakfast, guest houses, hostels, pubs as well. It's reduced a lot since people were banned from smoking. Sort of residential homes where you're providing, service accommodation, if you like. places like holiday camps as well, and all those type of things. Now, there is a company that I have never shared with you guys before, and I will now. And I'll put the link in the notes. So let's put that in there. I've never shared this one before, but I'm going to do it now. They provide Crib 5. They provide Crib 3 as well, but you want Crib 5. It's not your standard shitty looking ugly furniture that's Crib 5. So they're providing Crib 5. They've got different linings and that sort of stuff. Crib 3 doesn't have the linings. You can buy Crib 5 furniture treatment, to treat your current furniture. But if you're going to do that, I again would consult experts who do that, not some, handyman down the road. Make sure that you are going to be able to comply to Crib 5 regulations. It's basically just a fire, a spray that lowers the flash point or whatever it is, like the smoldering point. And again, you should have clear labels on your furniture. When you buy your furniture, take the labels off. And the Crib 5s are green, whereas the standard residential, I think, are just red. And they'll have on it, they'll have like the smoldering cigarette, the match, and a couple of other things as well that they have on there as part of the label. So that company, as you can see, has furnished that room. They've got specific service accommodation solutions. They even do HMOs and all of that sort of stuff as well. Okay. There's a few questions coming through, so I'll get to those. Let's just squeeze through this now. So have a look at that and go to furnishThatRoom.co.uk. Go on to the furniture solutions and click on service apartments, and you can get Crib 5 that's straight out of the box. And it's nice looking stuff. As I said, there is a 5-step process that you do for your own your fire self assessment. And you have to think with step 1 is, how could a fire break out or start on my premises? And you'll go through and you'll look at your TVs, and if your TV and your broadband and your Sky or your Virgin or whatever, and then there's a light, and then there's something else, and there's other plugs all piled up into that, then that could be something that you need to look at, because it could be that there's too many. It's an overloading the socket and that type of thing. So you need to look for things like where could there be a naked flame. So you might walk into your bedroom, one of the bedrooms, and go, wow, mate, we've got 2 candles in there, naked flame. Remove. Heaters, if you've got central heating, no problem. But if you've got separate heaters in there, and we always say never put them in, but you might have a gas heater or a radiator, you can, those oil burners, remove them. Don't put them in. Keep them out. Any electrical equipment, signs of smoking, matches, don't leave matches in the property. Even if you've got a property with a garden outside, don't leave matches. Don't leave one of those fire starter things. And again, for me, I would not provide a barbecue outside. I just wouldn't do it. And anything else, if you like, that may get super hot or can cause sparks or anything like that. So none of that's allowed in the property. And then think about your curtains, your furniture, cooking oil. Where would the cooking oil be? If you've got chip fat, whatever their machines, take them out. Any varnish, white spirits, methylated stuff that cleaner might leave in, they are not allowed to be left in the property. In fact, I would only leave the basics. I wouldn't even have aerosols in the property. Knowing what I know now, what I've learned over the last couple of weeks, I would not even allow aerosols in the property. Pretty much what they don't allow on aeroplanes, they put in your property, right? But check outside. If you've got a garden, make sure there's not a shed there that the owner might have left, and say to them, look, I know I'm not allowed to use the shed, but can I check in it? Because there's 2 or 3 bloody jerry cans of petrol and they're full. Well, we don't want that. We want that removed. So anything like that, and there could be solvents or varnish or paints or anything like that in the garage to get them all removed. Good. Number 2 is who is at risk. And they state that the fact is everyone is at risk if there is a fire. So you need to think about yourself, or somebody who has a family in there, guests, if there's staff and that type of thing. How can they get out? For example, young children or elderly or people with disabilities maybe to be very vulnerable. So they need to be completely familiar in how they get out of the building. And if your property is not, if you like, up to fire standards or accessible, or there's no real escape route for a person who may have disabilities or a young kid or babies, then I would put a restriction on the age and tell them that there is no mobility access or anything like that in your property. You might think, but that's the way it goes for fire safety. Number 3 is, what is your plan to keep people safe? And a lot of that will be from steps 1 and steps 2. You need to think about a heat source. A hair dryer, for instance, is a heat source. If it were to fall, can it be knocked or pushed into something that would burn? If they're going to put it over, which is why a lot of people put those ones in the bathroom that are all encased, and they can only use those ones. They're not that expensive, and that's why hotels put those in, because they don't want sort of naked hair dryers running around everywhere. Or put notes in there and that type of thing. But any sort of electrical equipment that you think, if it were to fail, what would happen if it were to fail? So you need to assess all of these things. I know it sounds mundane, but once you've done it once, then you're good, and you do it again in a year or less. And you should always record, plan, and train. So keep written records or a fire log of any significant finding from your risk assessment. So you might have found something where, like something like this, it had a frayed cord, and they might have had a little dog in it you didn't know about. The dog's bloody chewed cords. Get that checked every time a cleaner goes in. Just do a quick check of the cords, because that can be a fire risk. All right. So anything like that. You might say, oh, but no one's ever going to do that. It only takes one person to do it. Good. And then from there, you should work on how you can improve fire safety. Once you look at your log, you should also log the finding and log the fix. Good. And then log the test as well, that the fix has been tested and it does work. Good. And for these type of properties as well, you should be having everything PAT tested. Tony's qualified at doing PAT testing. Everything should be PAT tested, PAT tested. Good. I think if you had everything done in your property PAT tested, it's about 100 quid, something like that, 120. Get someone to come in and do the PAT testing. Good. Step 5, yes. And just maintain the fire risk assessment. Should be, and I would have a copy on your channel manager that's always there. All right. Just make sure you've got everything sort of in a central repository somewhere that you can quickly find if you need it. And again, your channel manager is a perfect place for that. Good. And you need to maintain and make sure that your risk assessments are there, because things change. You may have changed the kettle or the toaster and think, oh, did I get that PAT tested or not? Right, get it PAT tested, and so on and so forth. Good. And just keep everything in writing, and then you'll be covered. There is a fairly new document that let me find it. I'll find it for you. that the government has put out, and it's done by the Mayor of London. So that actually outlines the entire 5-step process for the self-assessment. So there's that link there. So that's probably one of the best out there. There are some more out there, but that's the government guidelines. It doesn't cover all of the C1 stuff, okay? It doesn't cover everything, the LS2s and all that type of thing you've got to put in there. It doesn't cover, the interlinked Wi-Fi detector. It just covers really the fire assessment plan. Good, right. Let's carry on. What else do we have? Good. Good. That pretty much covers a broad overview, if you like, of fire assessment. So, what would I do if I was starting out right now? If I were in a purpose-built property, as in a block of flats, it will have been built with fire safety already in place. What it is the crib 5 furniture and so on and so forth. So when you're looking at a property and it's furnished, you need to make sure it's got fire safety on it, and to see if you can get it sprayed with the crib 5 spray and get someone to assess that for you. If it's a non-purpose built, i.e. a conversion, you need to do a self-assessment of the building and the escape routes. Obviously, you can't go into the other apartments, but the escape routes, and how many are there? Are there 2, are there 3, are there 4, whatever there might be within that building. And then you can write that assessment down in the escape plan on the back of the door for your apartment. All right. And again, the soft furnishings, the furniture, etc., internally, make sure that they are either crib 5, or you can just one word, not a warning, but just something to be aware of. That if you get everything sprayed, as in your soft furnishings and blankets and that type of thing, with this crib 5 spray, and then they're washed, they'll need to be done again. All right. If you have your furniture cleaned or mats cleaned, then they're going to have to be done again. All right. Somebody's asking for crib 5 spray. There are loads. It's crib 5 fabric spray. Fire retardant. Where can you go? Okay. Let's have a look. You can get it from eBay and that type of thing, but I would go to somebody in your area that does like fire protection, because then they'll be experts and you can ask them if it works. So there's fireprotectonline.co.uk, and it's 13 quid for however much. I don't know how much it is. How big is it? Fire retardant foam. They do seals. They do all sorts of stuff. So they do quite a bit. And this is for 5 litres. All right. So it's not expensive stuff. And I would be looking at that. They also sell all your fire extinguishers, your first aid kits, and so on and so forth. So not a bad site. Okay, more questions. Let's go to questions. My Lord. Hello. Fire doors in the purpose-built properties will be 30 mil. That's 30 minute. They may also, some, depending on the size of the building, may have 60 mil doors and self-closing and all this type of stuff. So all of that is part of your C1. With your C3, that's not something that's needed. Good morning, Ash. I have a rent-to-rent where the fire doors are rated. The doors are fire rated. Landlord was happy to me put ring camera, but declined on the grounds that putting in a holder door would damage the fire rated door. Correct. So what options do I have for installing camera? Okay, you can just stick it on with that 3M backing tape. Mine at home is stuck on. So yeah, you can do that. Do you need to consider fire instructions for people who do not speak English? Yes. Either Booking.com and all of those provide the translation service anyway. So most of them can just use Translate, and I would put a note on there if you need to translate it, put it into Google Translate. Otherwise, mate, I think there's about 600 different dialects of Chinese for a start, so you could be pushing yourself out. Vincenzo's kindly sent me a link, and I will put that in there. The Fire Angel one. There you go. Yeah, I know my screen's not shared. Field of garden, still no barbecue. It's something that can have naked flames, it can have a gas bottle, whatever it is. And yeah, sure. If we're going to ride, so someone's asking, should I still have a barbecue? So if you can have a barbecue at home, you have a barbecue, right? You cook it, you turn the gas on, you cook your meat, you turn it off. However, if it were 3 or 4 lads and or ladies, and alcohol gets involved, or even drugs, we don't know what people do in our properties in most times. And they decide that it would be fun to maybe go out, get some lighter fuel, and spray it all over the place and create nice big fires. They may even say to themselves, "Oh, look, there's a nice bit of wood here. Let's just build a campfire." If it's gas and they leave the gas on, there's a chance of explosion or flying out here or doing whatever. So it's up to you. However, it's a fire risk, and it's a very high fire risk. Accidents happen. And hey, you might have the property for 10 years and nothing happens. 10 years and one day, it's up to you to do your own self-assessment. I've answered that one about the creep spray. How do you protect artwork from fire? Artwork doesn't come into the regulations. It's basically the furnishings, soft furnishings, pillows, and that type of stuff. Artwork doesn't come into it because, in other words, I guess you're going to have to, crib 5, hardwood, and whatever. So, yeah. Artwork would be, I guess, highly flammable, but again, it's on the wall. It's kind of, if when you're doing your assessment and something fails, it's not something that's going to be at high risk, if you like. All right. Good. That covers fire safety. If you are super diligent, you will have an assessment done on your property, and you can claim that cost back. The product to stick the camera is that 3M, backing tape. Yeah, it's 2-sided. Put on like 3 or 4 strips. It's pretty hard to get off, so just make sure you're not going to damage the door, because it's pretty good. Fantastic. Good. Okay. So in addition to fire safety, questions. Vincenzo, can I ask something regarding a new deal I have lined up? Absolutely, fire away. Should the landlord be paying some of these costs? Hey, if you can negotiate it, no problem. The landlord might, if I was a landlord, okay, so I'm a landlord and you've come to me and you've said, Ash, I want to use your property service accommodation. Go ahead, do it. Everything's in place, fine. Oh, Ash, I need to spend 200, 300, 400, 500, whatever it is, on upgrading the fire safety. Would you like to go half? So I'd be like, well, no, not really, because it's down to you. It's your business that you're operating here. That's me kind of funding your business to make my property up to the fire standards of what you're doing, but I don't need to because I'll just rent it out to someone else. Could be that. However, if it's a property and the landlord has specifically got the mortgage and that type of thing for service accommodation, in other words, they can claim back all of their taxes and the mortgage and that type of thing, then there could be something you could talk about. Because if it's a new building, some of the fire safety bits they can claim back as a capital expenditure. So they can claim tax on these things. Good? As they do on the property and that type of thing. But it's a conversation you need to have with them. Ultimately, but it's worth asking. You should pat test everything. Brand new, 1 year old, 2 years old. Okay, this is the email received after. Okay, so Vincenzo. Good morning, Vincenzo. I hope you had a good weekend. The landlord has had a chat with the managing agents on Friday and there are no objections to short lets. They discourage Airbnb. Good. But I think there's more to do with volume of traffic through common parts, etc., which isn't relevant here. So you've got that in writing. That's all approved by them. I would ask for an email from the landlord and the managing agent to the landlord, because you cannot rely on anyone's chitter chatter. So I just say, yeah, no problem. Can you sit? Or they have done that. Yeah, they've had a chat and they've done that. Okay, you want to see an email if you like, just confirmation from the owner and the managing agent, and then you'll all go, buddy. Well done. The property has a private entrance, even better, especially now that we're talking about fire safety as well. Vincenzo, it'd be good, man. That's all I would do. Get the confirmation in writing. You've got it from the agent. Get an email that the owner has sent to the agent, and also the managing agent. Good. Well done, mate. And I know that will probably bring you in a lot of money, profit, given where you are. Well done. Good deal, Vincenzo. And I think, Vincenzo, you're coming as well to the options day. Timbo's coming, yes. Arlene's coming. Who else is on here that's coming? Paul, yes. Vincenzo, Claudia, yes. There are others coming, but I can't remember. But I think we're full, or we have 2 spaces left. Because I know Tim's coming alone. Good. You're welcome. Good. Farida, I think you wanted to come to the options day last time, but it was full. I'm not sure if you want to come to the options day on the 30th, but the price has gone up now. But I recall that you asked about it and you weren't on here last week. So if you want to, let me know and I'll drop the price again for you, because it dropped by 200 quid just for you guys. I'll show the apartment. Good man, Vincenzo. Okay, guys, that covers everything. Well done. Let's get compliant with fire safety. then you are covered, and all of the nice people who pay to stay in your properties are covered as well, safety wise, and you can sleep at night knowing that everything's fine and covered. Great. I'm pushing like savage here. I know, mate. You always are. Good. Keep going. Right. Well done, guys. Thank you. Any questions, ping me an email, and we'll go from there. And for those who I'm chatting to, I'll chat to you after 1 o'clock. Awesome day. Bye.